Well, I'm telling you right now, it's a big Sunday in the fantasy football world, guys. This is it. It's our final battle right here. I've been talking about it all week. This is determining whether you're making playoffs or not. Maybe your playoffs have already started. Some people like to do those leagues. I'm in one particular league where week 14 is the first week of the playoffs. I don't personally prefer it like that. I personally prefer to be in the playoffs starting in week 15. And I'll tell you what, though. Either way, I'm excited. I'm excited to be here. I'm excited to have you guys here. It's going to be a really big day. Obviously, there's a lot of injuries that we need to cover and some really important injuries as well, especially as we get into those later games. The Monday and Sunday night games, they have too many injuries, man. It's annoying to have to keep track of everything like that because the last thing we want, especially to must-start guys like Ladd McConkey, for example, I think is the perfect example of a must-start that is a game-time call. That's not good, man. The fact that he's a game-time call is a really bad omen for how Sunday night's going to go, right? So, not good with Ladd McConkey. Unfortunately, to start out with him, if you've got Ladd McConkey and you've got another option like Jacoby Myers or maybe DeAndre Hopkins, or not DeAndre Hopkins, if you have a Jacoby Myers or a Devonta Smith that you're looking to play, it's unfortunately, I got to tell you to go with those options because we know those two are going. Well, I think we know Jacoby Myers is going. We know that Devonta Smith is going. So Jacoby Myers is expected to play. So yeah, you're going to have to go with those options because we know that those guys are going. Now, if you have a Sunday night option, if you have a Quentin Johnston or a, DeAndre Hopkins level guy, that's obviously fine to just see how that plays out because those are Sunday night guys. So unfortunately, we're just at that point. We're at that point. You can't really take any chances on this one. So bear with me today, guys. Definitely feeling the allergies today here in South Central Texas. So like the video, subscribe to the channel. Let's start getting into some of y'all's questions. All right, we'll start from the top. JT Blue Gobs, what's going on? Would you rather have James Cook or Kamara for playoffs? Personally, for me, James Cook. And I can say that to you without even looking at schedule. And the reason is because, Alvin Kamara, this is 2 straight years now that he front loads a lot of his big production at the beginning of the year. A lot of that is just front loaded right out of the gate from Alvin Kamara. If you look at Alvin Kamara and his fantasy production over the last month and a half, since week 5, realistically, he's had one 20-point game and a couple 14 to 15-point games, and that's been kind of it. So, week 15, 16, and 17 for him, he's got Washington, Green Bay, Las Vegas, which are, pretty good matchups right there. But at the same time, James Cook is getting hot. He's starting to get hot, and he's younger. So it makes sense that, he has just a bigger tank, coming into the month of December when it really matters for fantasy playoffs, when we need to get some big plays. The last 5 games, 26 points, 9 points, 15, 17, 18. He didn't front load all his production at the beginning of the year like Kamara did. And listen, he's got Detroit in week 15. That's not a good one. But then he's got New England and New York. I don't think that New England and New York are particularly tough opponents. So yeah, for me, it's going to be James Cook 100%. Football de Noche, what's going on? Choose 2 out of the following: Aaron Jones, Isaiah Pacheco, Bucky Irving, or Braylon Allen. Bucky's going to play, right? Bucky expected to play. Okay. So that's good. So Bucky Irving is going to play. Now, I have to go with Bucky for one of them because he's a top 10 guy for me this week. I really think Bucky Irving's a great play. Matchup obviously is fantastic versus Las Vegas, and he's on heater. You got to go with Bucky for sure as one of them. And the other one, I would probably end up going with Braylon Allen personally. Like, Braylon Allen, like, I went live Friday night. If you missed it, went live Friday night and discussed, obviously had a lot of questions about Braylon Allen. So, you know, with Braylon, I kind of was like, it was on Friday night, so Brees had basically just been ruled doubtful. So I was still kind of like playing with it. Where am I going to rank Braylon Allen? He's in that same tier I ranked Brees at, but just at the back of that tier, which puts him above Aaron Jones and Pacheco. So for me personally, I just think the matchup versus the Dolphins is too strong. So I'm personally going to go with Braylon Allen and Bucky Irving. Ryan, what's going on? Appreciate the super chat. Having trouble trusting Hubbard, Jones, and Najee this week, but gotta pick one. Yeah, I don't blame you. I do not blame you for struggling with trust between those guys. Ordinarily, I would trust Chuba 1,000 times over because Chuba's been great. And he was my shot call this year, as many of you know. I've been a lunatic shouting about Chuba Hubbard all offseason, but, you know, this matchup sucks. Like, there's no way around it. This matchup is going to... I'll tell you this, like, on a personal level, and I hope this helps. Like, I have Chuba Hubbard in basically every redraft / dynasty league I'm in right now. And I am in the playoffs. I've clinched playoffs in all but 2 of those leagues. And the leagues where I have clinched playoffs, just got a notification. George Pickens is out today, as expected. Came down with a hammy injury on Friday. So move Pickens out of your lineup if he's there. So as I was saying, like, in the leagues where I have Chuba and I'm in the playoffs, like, I'm playing him because I don't view it as much of a risk. I'm not one of those people, like, personally for me, I don't care if I get a bye week or not. It doesn't matter for me. In the leagues I'm not clinched in, I'm trying to make other arrangements because the matchup is so brutal for Chuba this week. And listen, he did really well against Kansas City, and that was a brutal matchup too. But that was a close game. I don't see this one being as close. Now, Aaron Jones has, to me, the most upside this week versus the Falcons. I do think that Aaron Jones is probably the move. I will give Najee. Let me give Najee a little bit of time here because Najee. You know, I was about to say, like, before I saw that Pickens is out, I was about to say, like, I can't imagine Pickens is going to play today. So Najee probably is going to end up getting, like, 6 targets. I would assume, you know, he's gonna see a pretty good amount of work because they don't have another wide receiver. Like, Calvin Austin and Van Jefferson are their wide receiver 2 and 3. So I would imagine Najee gets pretty significant work. I think Najee is not a bad play. I'd play him over Chuba personally, but I'd play Aaron Jones over Najee because I see Aaron Jones' upside being upwards of 20. I don't particularly see that for Najee. I think Najee's upside is probably around 15 to 17 points. And I think their floors are relatively in the same spot. So for me personally, I think I'd go with Aaron Jones to maximize upside while also maintaining that safer floor. Appreciate the super chat, fellow Ryan. Powerhouse, what's going on? Appreciate the super chat. Pick 3, Hopkins, Scantling, Elijah Moore, Thielen, and Calvin Austin. Well, one of those guys, I'm probably going to go with Scantling. Because with Scantling, I just, you know, it's like Nick Westbrook and Keenan right now. Like, you kind of ride the lightning, but you don't play him over, like, you know, DK Metcalf or anybody like that. But your guys right there are not in that upper tier to where it's like, I can't imagine playing Marquez Valdes-Scantling. Like, you're in a tier here where Marquez Valdes-Scantling makes sense to go ahead and play him. It makes perfect sense. So I think I'll shoot for the upside with Scantling as one of the guys. To kind of level out the playing field, I think Hopkins will have to go in my lineup as well. Because with D-Hop, he's not going to get like 20 points. His upside is probably 12 to 15 points. But his floor, I would say, is relatively close to that. I think that this week they're not going to be able to run the ball very well. The Chargers are tough, and obviously the running game is kind of a mess still. So I think that Hopkins ends up, getting like anywhere between 7 to 15 points. I think that's a pretty safe bet to kind of counteract the potential 0 points that you could get from Valdes-Scantling, which is very possible. And then that last option, I'm teetering between Elijah Moore and Calvin, because with Calvin Austin, like I don't know how he's going to respond to being like the focal point of attention. Like, they've had good success with him recently because of George Pickens. Like, Pickens is so clearly the number one wide receiver that, like, defenses understand. Like, we just kind of got to shut Pickens down. Now, Austin's been able to take advantage of that because he is, he gets single coverage a lot. And then he'll, like, rush down the seam and they'll throw him a deep ball. But I don't know how likely it's going to happen today with, probably a safety high coverage since they don't have Pickens. Elijah Moore, I think that he's going to get a significant amount of targets again. I could see Elijah Moore getting anywhere between 6 to 12 targets. So for me personally, I think I've got to stick with the target share and go with Elijah Moore. So for me personally, I'd go Hopkins, Scantling, and Elijah Moore. Appreciate the super chat. Danilo J. Luna. What's going on? Appreciate the super chat. Flex 1, Braylon Allen or Tracy Jr.? They're very close. They're very, very close. Tyrone Tracy, my grievance with him is, I've said this, the past several weeks and all week this week for sure, is that, my problem with him stems from his team, not him. Right? So, like, he is just on such a dysfunctional team that at any point, like, they could stray away from him very easily. Like, they do that already. Like, they still give opportunities to Devin Singletary. I think it's because they're trying to punish him for basically, struggling to hang on to the ball, which he has done. And I don't blame them necessarily for doing that because he's a rookie. But at the same time, like, he's so clearly their number one player that it's frustrating, for sure. It's definitely frustrating. So, it's something I just can't rely on with him is that, that workload and just the instability of the Giants. Obviously the Jets aren't much more stable as far as, like, what their plans are on a weekly basis. And that would worry me for Brees, right? But Brees is not playing. So you've got Braylon Allen and you've got nobody. Like, what's their backup's name? Like Isaiah Davis or something like that? I don't know. I don't really know anything about him. Isaiah Davis, yeah. Was he a rookie? Is he a rookie? Yeah, he's a rookie. Okay, yeah, I do remember this guy, yeah. Either way, like, we haven't seen any of him all year. So I don't think that, like, they're all of a sudden going to just, like, stray away from Braylon Allen, who has worked for them this year. So for me personally, I just think, I'd have to go with Braylon Allen because they both have really strong matchups. I just trust Braylon Allen's workload more than I trust Tracy's. Appreciate the super chat. That is how you get your question answered immediately, to throw in a super chat. Until then, we'll just go from top to bottom. Okay, Vaporware, what's going on? Appreciate the super chat. Like I said, guys, bear with me today. I'm definitely experiencing the South Central Texas allergies today. Bro, love the channel. I appreciate your grind. I appreciate you appreciating it. Not comfortable with my wide receivers. Addison, Westbrook, Devonta Smith. Should I replace any with folks like Thielen, Austin with Pickens dinged up, Elijah Moore? Let's see. Addison definitely has upside today versus the Falcons defense. Not much of a... I would say, I've been kind of reassessing lately, though. Like, Addison's floor, as of late, has not been super low. Like, dating back to week 9, his lowest game was 3.9, but, like, his second lowest game was 7.4, and he's had a 25-plus point performance and, a couple 13 to 15-point performances depending on your format. So, he's not been bad as of late. And I love the matchup. I do like playing Addison this week, personally. I think where the problem could arise is Devonta Smith to me, personally. Like, Devonta Smith, I did say this over the week, which is that the problem I see with Devonta Smith is that if you look at, like, Devonta Smith and where he's had his worst games this year, they've been in blowouts. Like, they blew out the Giants in week 7. They blew out the Cowboys in week 10. They blew out the Commanders in week 11. So, this is not... Today they're going to blow out the Panthers, right? And this is where he's had his worst games in fantasy. So, I see the problem personally more so with Devonta Smith. I actually would play Nick Westbrook-Ikine over him, personally. I wouldn't replace him with Thielen, personally, because I think the Eagles are going to choke out the Panthers today. Like, I don't think there's much upside for anybody in Carolina. In fact, the guy I trust the most is Chuba, and I don't really trust Chuba that much. With Austin and Elijah Moore, it makes sense, personally, for me to play over Devonta Smith. I'd personally, again, prefer Elijah Moore. Because Calvin Austin with George Pickens out. And George Pickens is out, guys. So make sure that your lineups are set accordingly. George Pickens being out, I don't think helps Calvin Austin. I think it hurts him because the guy's 5'8". And most of the time, that guy is not seeing double coverage. Like, he's getting singled up most of the time. There's not a safety playing deep on him. Today there will be, because that's kind of the best threat they've got. They don't have a possession receiver without Pickens. They've got nothing. So for me personally, I think that Elijah Moore is the guy I personally would play over Devonta Smith. I'd go with Addison, Westbrook, and Elijah Moore because Addison and Westbrook they're both boomer bust guys. So I want to counteract that with some volume. And I see it with Elijah Moore without Cedric Tillman there. Appreciate the super chat. Next up, we had Sir Steven. What is going on? Appreciate the super chat. Otten or Ingram? Yeah, I've had, obviously, Cade Otten has been, bad since Mike Evans came back. What encouraged me last week was 7 targets, right? Like, in the matchup this week is obviously just as good as it was last week when they played the Panthers, right? So, like, I don't think that he's got, like, he's not like a broken down car. Like, for me personally, I would personally play him over Ingram because to me, Ingram isn't a broken down car, but he's leaking oil because he's older. He's already not had a great year, and he's got he's got an XFL quarterback throwing him the ball today. Mac Jones, honestly, guys, I think I could go out there and play better than Mac Jones. I think it's very possible that I did. Obviously, I'm joking. But Mac Jones stinks. He's bad. So, I just think that with Cade Otton, I'd rather take the upside chance. Because your best case scenario with Mac Jones at quarterback with Evan Ingram is like 4 to 5 points at a half PPR. Cade Otton with 7 targets last week. This guy can still put up a 12-point game, I think. Possibly more if he gets in the end zone. So, I personally would go with the upside with Otton. Appreciate the super chat. Powerhouse, what's going on? Appreciate the super chat. Juwan Jennings worst starting. Elijah Moore or Scaling? Yeah, I think Juwan Jennings is a good play, relatively, depending on who you've got. Like, I did say this on the must start and sit wide receiver video yesterday. If you didn't watch it, the only reason that Jennings wasn't in must start category was because I don't like the matchup. That shouldn't be a secret, right? Like, the matchup stinks. It's against the Bears, who have all year been good against wide receivers in fantasy. And it hasn't changed. So that's the only reason. But I do think that Juwan Jennings is a good play with Brock Purdy. I do still like him. It just comes down to who you've got. Like, I'm assuming these are 2 separate questions. But personally for me, I'd play Jennings over both Elijah Moore and Scantling. Just in case that's part of the same question. Between Elijah Moore and Scantling, it also, I'll leave this one and say this, right? Like, they both have their own level of upside this week from different formats, right? Like, if you are looking for a safer floor play, like if you've got, Bijan Robinson and you've got James Cook, Devon Achane, and Jamar Chase tomorrow, and Joe Burrow tomorrow. Like, if you've got tons of points already in your lineup, then you probably just want to go with a safer option just in case a couple of them bust. Elijah Moore's that play. Like, because I think Elijah Moore is probably getting between 6 to 12 targets today, anywhere between there. So Elijah Moore is the safer play for sure. Now, if you are projected to get, let's say, 10 less fantasy points than your opponent. Projections don't matter, by the way. But if you don't have confidence in your lineup and you want to take a bigger shot, like, that's where Scantling comes in. Like, Scantling, I think, can get you 20 points. I don't think Elijah Moore's getting you 20, but he has no floor. Like, understand, if you play Scantling, you could easily come out with 0 points. Let's get that straight. So that is really going to be, I think, the way you should look at it is if you feel very confident in your lineup already and you just want to save a floor, Elijah Moore's the guy. But if you don't feel confident and you need to hit the big play, then go with Marquez Valdes-Scantling. Appreciate the super chat. Azerb, what's going on? Appreciate the super chat. PPR, Westbrook-Akine or Devonta Smith in survival mode. Yeah, personally for me, I'm going with Westbrook-Akine. And it goes against, like, what I would normally do. Because normally, like, for me personally, I would play Devonta Smith. Because Devonta Smith's a better player, and he's usually more consistent. Now, again, I've pointed it out several times over the last week or so. Devonta Smith's worst moments this year, the bust games that he's had, have been in blowouts. Where they crushed the Giants, they crushed the Cowboys, and they crushed the Commanders. They're going to crush the Panthers today. I fully expect that. So, if we're following the trend here, he probably will bust. So, I don't see him having at the very least, I don't think he has a very safe floor. Now, Westbrook-Akine doesn't have a safe floor either. That guy is not getting targets. He's not getting enough receptions for a safe floor. But the positive here is that he's on fire. Like, I keep saying, I don't know how he keeps getting away with it. It's unreal. But this guy has scored 8 touchdowns receiving in the last 8 games. He's averaging a touchdown per game on no more than 5 catches. No more than that. Like, that's insanity. So, personally for me, I think the matchup is great with Westbrook and Kine this week. I've got to go with Westbrook and Kine personally. Appreciate the super chat. Beef Chocolate, what's going on? Appreciate the super chat. DK, NWI, Adams, Mooney, Moore, Wilson, or Stafford. So I'm assuming we're picking one out of this list of wide receivers. I'll just go ahead and rank them. So for me personally, DK is number one. I think DK is a combo of the safest floor with the highest upside in this group. You've got, for me personally, like DK obviously has not hit the ceiling that we know he can since he came back from injury, but like his ceiling is 25 points. Today against Arizona, Arizona's more of a bend but don't break defense, but they can absolutely, like DK can take the top off anybody. Now again, his floor is really safe. He's not going to get you anything less than like 8 to 10 points depending on half PPR or full PPR. So DK is number one for me. I would go with Mooney as number two. No, I'd go with Devontae Adams as number two realistically, because Devontae is sort of similar to DK, where his floor I think is actually pretty safe right now. Like he's getting as many as 15 targets per game the past month. Like he's been the number one. So I really like I really think that Adams is a pretty safe play right now. I'd go with Mooney as my third because I don't, I think his upside is really high this week versus the Vikings, but I don't think he has much of a floor. And I feel the same way about Nick Westbrook-Ikine, who I'd personally play over Elijah Moore. But again, that is such a... Elijah Moore and Nick Westbrook-Ikine are in the same tier. It comes down to how you plan to use your lineup this week. Do you need safe points? Elijah Moore's your guy. Do you want the potential of 20-plus points? Nick Westbrook-Ikine is your guy. So for me, it goes DK, Adams, Mooney, Nick Westbrook-Ikine, and then Elijah Moore. Wilson or Stafford? For me personally, I'm playing Stafford today. I would have played Russ had he had Pickens. I think he's going to be affected without Pickens. They have nobody else. Like, Calvin Austin has served a good role, and I think he will continue to do that when Pickens comes back. He's not a number one. Van Jefferson shouldn't even be on the field, and he is. Mike Williams, maybe he gets a little bit of work today. I don't know. This team, they are so weird with how they use wide receivers. So I don't trust any Steelers receiver at this point without George Pickens. So I'm going with Stafford today. I get it. The matchup's not good. I don't think it's great for Russ either, though. It's a divisional matchup versus the Browns I don't love. And I think with Stafford, he's gotten you really safe points since the bye week. He's had one bust game, but outside of that bust game, he's given you basically, 17 points per game at the very least, and a ceiling that's really high. So against Buffalo today, even against the Eagles, he had 19, to 22 points, depending on your format. I think that Matt Stafford's the better play that I would personally make this week. Appreciate the super chat. The Argonite 1234. What's going on? Appreciate the super chat. Disley or Frymuth? MVS is my flex. Thanks. Yeah, I'd go with Pat Frymuth today. I mean, like I said, I think the guy, honestly, who probably benefits the most from Pickens being out is the Muth. I think he will benefit the most because, he's Russ is establishing chemistry a little bit with Pat Frymuth. It's taken a little bit, but it's definitely starting to happen. So I do think that, there's a good chance that he could get in the end zone this week, and I also think that there's just a good chance he ends up with like close to 10 targets because he's gonna be like, who else is their possession receiver? And like if you look at the Steelers and like what they've done passing the ball, like they haven't done a ton of like possession receiver type of routes, I guess. But I think today that plan might change because, like I said, I don't think they're gonna have their deep ball today. I'd personally go with Freiermuth. MVS is your flex. Yeah, I think that there's more safety with Freiermuth today. And his matchup's better than Disley's. Appreciate the super chat. Next up was Joel. What's going on? Appreciate the super chat. Must win. Herbert or Darnold and Braylon Allen or Garendo. Yeah, I don't think that Herbert's my favorite play this week. You know, I'll give you an example. Like, I have Justin Herbert in a bunch of best ball leagues. Now, this is the last week. If you drafted best ball before the start of the season, this is the last week before playoffs. I'm in the playoffs in several. Like, there's nothing that can happen that would shove me out of the playoffs. But there's also a lot of leagues that I'm in where it's close. Like, I need some things to go right today for me, and one of those is I need Justin Herbert to have a big day. I don't have tons of confidence in that, you know, and obviously it's best ball. You can't make the lineup change or anything like that, but my point being, like, versus the Chiefs today, I don't think it's going to be a very high. I think this is actually going to be a really low-scoring game tonight. Like, it's going to be fun, in my opinion, from a football perspective, a football fan's perspective, but you know, with Herbert, I don't think that he's going to have, like, a great game tonight. I think that his floor is kind of what he did last week against the Falcons, like 7 to 9 points, depending on your format. I think it's definitely that low. Now, on the other hand, I think with Darnold, like, his ceiling and floor, I think it's just a lot safer. Like, Darnold, anyways, has basically had a really safe floor all year. Like, he's had a couple of stinkers there, but outside of Jacksonville and outside of New York, like, he's had pretty good success. So, for me personally, I think Darnold just feels a lot safer, and the upside feels higher. So, I'm going Darnold. And Braylon Allen or Garendo, you know, this is a good question, obviously, since they both haven't started this year yet. For me, Garendo's the better play. Garendo just is in a tier above Braylon, personally, because, like I said, with Braylon, we don't know. First of all, are they keeping up with the Dolphins today? I think they might for a little bit, and I think Braylon will be a good play, but, you know, I have way more questions with their game plan because they don't have a formula for anything. They just throw stuff at the wall all the time to see what works. This team has no formula. Nothing. So, yeah, for me, like, with the 49ers, like, I know what I'm getting from the 49ers. Like, with Kyle Shanahan, that dude is going to run the ball for better or for freaking worse. It doesn't matter. That guy will run the ball. So, I think that Garendo just is the better play. And at the same time, like, the weakness that the Bears defense has had has been against running backs. So I'll go with Garendo over Braylon Allen. Appreciate the super chat. What's going on? Appreciate the super chat. Dude, love that dog in the picture. It's a cute dog. PPR, 2 wide receivers and 1 flex. Ridley, Jennings, DK, MHJ, Hopkins, and Braylon Allen. So full PPR. DK's got to go in for sure. As I said, he's got a combo of the safest floor and the highest ceiling in the bunch. I think Ridley's ceiling is really high this week too. Braylon already feels like an unstable play. I think Braylon could net anywhere between 5 to 18, maybe 20 points today. Like, I think his floor is pretty unstable. So, I think I would play Braylon in the flex, personally, because I do think his upside is really high. Ridley, to me, feels safer than Jennings this week because the matchup is so good. And, like, realistically, like, if we look at Calvin Ridley's floor over the past 7 weeks, it's actually been pretty good. Calvin Ridley, ever since week 6, like, really hasn't busted too bad, especially in a full PPR league. Like, these are half PPR numbers. He's done pretty well in a full PPR league. So I think that Ridley is actually a relatively safe play this week versus Jacksonville. So I'd go DK, I'd go Ridley, and I would go with Braylon Allen on the flex. Appreciate the super chat. G Medina, what's going on? Appreciate the super chat. Half PPR, go Jennings or Westbrook and Cook or Bucky. Jennings and Westbrook is a really good question because there's two different angles for this one. Now, I want to make this very clear. Jennings is over Westbrook in my rankings by a pretty decent amount. Like, Jennings moved down a little bit for me after I did the wide receiver rankings this week, but he's still in good shape. Like, I think that he's still I feel comfortable having him ranked higher than Westbrook-Akine in my personal rankings. I feel comfortable doing that. Now, I will say this. Like, I do think that Westbrook-Akine, again, it's two trains of thought. Because Westbrook-Akine, I think, relatively has a similar ceiling to Jennings, but I think Jennings does have a higher floor. Because, like, realistically, guys, like, if they're going to have any success throwing the ball, San Francisco, that is, it's going to be with Juwan Jennings. Like, they cannot rely on Debo at this point. It's going to be through Kittle for sure, obviously, but it's going to also be through Jennings. Like, those are their two best options. Ricky Pearsall isn't trustworthy. Debo is obviously having a bad year. So I think Jennings is probably the safer play and just as high of a ceiling as Westbrook. I'd go with Jennings personally. And Cook or Bucky. They're both great. Obviously, there's a great problems to have. No question about it. I think for me, I'll pick Cook. Because what feels better about Cook to me this week is that he doesn't... When I watched Cook leave the stadium last weekend, I didn't see him wrapped up like a freaking mummy. Like, that's what I saw with freaking Bucky. Like, Bucky left the stadium like a mummy. He was just like, it reminded me of watching A Christmas Story. Has anybody seen A Christmas Story? Like when Ralphie's parents basically like had him and his little brother just like bundled up like just stiff boards for the winter. Like, that's what Bucky reminded me of last week. Just like watching him walk out of the stadium like that. There's no way that guy's healthy. He has a great matchup today. Cook doesn't Cook's matchup isn't like horrific, but it's not obviously as good as Bucky's. I just think Cook feels like a safer play with just as much upside, obviously. Love Bucky, love the play. Not trying to down Bucky at all, but when you talk about Cook and Bucky, like, you're splitting hairs here. So I've got to go with Cook, who feels safer and also just as much upside. Appreciate the super chat. All right, next up we had Nicodemus. What's going on? Appreciate the super chat. Start Darnold or Murray? Full PPR. Darnold. He feels safer, and obviously I've always said, like, I think I'm higher than consensus is on Kyler. Now, I don't know where everybody else has him ranked. I don't usually watch like other fantasy YouTubers. I think a lot of them are jokers, but no, there's some of them that do really good work. But like, nonetheless, I do think that with Kyler, he just doesn't feel particularly. Kyler does not feel particularly safe right now. Like, his upside is great. Obviously, I think it's a little bit higher than Darnold's. But if I'm using the last time they played Seattle as a frame of reference here, then I don't think that this is going to be a particularly high-scoring matchup. That's actually why I had both defenses inside the top 5 for me this week. Top 5, not top 10, not top 12. Both the Seahawks defense and the Cardinals defense, I believe, are top 5 plays. Because I think there's going to be mistakes, and I think there's going to be low scoring. So I don't feel confident for Kyler this week, but I do feel pretty confident going with Darnold. Appreciate the super chat. Like the video, subscribe to the channel really quick if you haven't done so already. What are you doing if you haven't done so? Patrick, what's going on? Appreciate the super chat. Let's see. Start Jameis or Herbert, who may not have Ladd. Herbert is a later game. Could also pick up Rush and wait. Already clinched the playoffs, so might be doing too much. I will say this, like, I think some people need to hear this. I'll give it to you 2 ways. So, like, when you've clinched playoffs, don't try to do too much. Like, I'll give you an example. So, like I said, in every redraft league or dynasty league that I'm in, I've clinched playoffs in all but 2 leagues. And this week, I'm fighting for playoffs in 2 of those leagues. So, in one of my dynasty leagues in particular, I'm locked into the 5 seed. Like, locked in. I can't do anything to go to the 4 seed. Nothing happen. Like, nothing will kick me down to the 6 seed. I'm locked in. So I have the Texans. I have Miami Fairbairn and the Broncos defense on bye. And I plan to use them both in week 15. And so I was like, I'm not risking anything. Like, I'm not risking dropping these guys just to, like, play, just to, like, make a play this week. Like, I'm not risking that. So I'm holding both those guys because I don't feel comfortable dropping anybody. And I'll also say this, like, I don't personally think it matters whether you get a bye or not. I don't. Like, for me personally, this is a mindset thing. Like, in the years where I've gotten buys, I've gotten comfortable and I've taken my foot off the gas. And whether that wasn't paying attention as much, like in week 15, or, feeling sluggish or something like that, like, I've lost more than I've won that when I got a bye. Like, so bye weeks don't really matter to me. So, like, if you're in a position where you have to, like, cut somebody to get Cooper Rush, like, that doesn't make any sense to me. If you're already clinched in the playoffs, like, I think you're in good shape. I think that, personally for me, I think that Jameis is a good play. I think Jameis is a really good play, actually. So, yeah, I do think that Jameis, you're good with that. Appreciate the super chat. Jesse M, what's going on? Appreciate the super chat. Q in the chat, please, must win. All right, let's see. Jesse M, where are you? Jesse, I can't find your question, man. I will say this. If the question that you guys ask is, like, really far away, please just put it, like, in the super chat. Okay, I got you right here. My bad, I got you right here. Okay, half PPR. Start Bigsby at 1 p.m. or wait and see if Swift is out to start Homer. I know Swift expected to play, but I don't know. Also have Ray Davis in the afternoon available. Or Isaiah Davis. Thanks, man. So, for me personally, like, starting Tank Bigsby literally, like, to me, it's like forfeiting a week. Like, you can't, this offense is so horrendous. And they're splitting work between Tank and ETN sometimes. It's like there's no upside. You're max getting like 4 points from Tank Bigsby. It's embarrassing. Like it's bad because Tank has actually been better than ETN this year. Not close. So it sucks, but I think starting Tanks, it's rough. I personally would do your strategy of like waiting to see if you can start Travis Homer. Because Swift, Swift is expected to play. But also the good thing that you can do is that Ray Davis makes more sense to me than Tank does too. Like Ray Davis has gotten work at a relatively consistent level, and he's just on a better offense than Tank Bigsby is. So personally for me, like I would just sit Tank Bigsby on my bench and see if maybe there's an off chance you could play Travis Homer. But if you can't, just put in Ray Davis. I think that's a good strategy right there. Personally, I think that you've got it down with that, Jesse. Because Isaiah Davis, I don't trust. I don't like that matchup. The matchup's good. I don't like the opportunity for him at all without with Braylon Allen in there. So yeah, I would personally see if you could possibly play Homer, and then I would end up going with Ray Davis, if you can. Appreciate the super chat. All right, next up we have Vaporware. What's going on? Appreciate the super chat. One more. Aaron Jones or Tyron Tracy? Not one more for me. I'm good. we're here up until kickoff. Aaron Jones or Tyron Tracy? Ugh. Aaron Jones, without question, has more upside. Without question. I actually think Tyron Tracy has a safer floor. Aaron Jones. I'll be honest. Like I've been kind of down on Aaron Jones lately, but the reality is, like when you look at his points per game since week 7, like he's actually been pretty safe to play. I think Aaron Jones is probably the better play. Because he's definitely got the higher upside between him and Tracy. I don't personally think he has a safer floor. Atlanta is a relatively tough matchup versus running backs. Ironically, because their defense sucks. But they've had success against fantasy running backs. So I just think that you can't trust the Giants, man. I would go with Aaron Jones. Appreciate the super chat. X Ristos Carasolis. What's going on? Appreciate the super chat. Need to. Juwan Johnson, Noah Gray, Calvin Austin. Juwan Johnson's not a bad play. He's really not. Like, the good thing with Juwan Johnson is that this offense has nothing. Nothing. It's actually insane when you think about how depleted the Saints are. Like, that team is so depleted of playmakers. So it's like, whether they like to or whether they want to or not, like they have to throw to Juwan Johnson. It's crazy when you think about how depleted they are. Last week without Taysom, first game without Taysom, they had 7 targets. Well, they did have Taysom last week, but he had 7 targets last week. Like, they've got to use the guy. Noah Gray, that one felt like more of a fluke to me, personally. Like, I'm not saying Noah Gray's not a good play, but, like, it felt kind of Tucker Crafty. And the problem with that is that Tucker Kraft, we know, is the tight end 1. He's actually the only tight end that matters in Green Bay. Obviously, there's Travis Kelce there, right? And Travis Kelce's actually been pretty good in fantasy. So, like, I don't think Noah Gray is. I don't feel as good about playing Noah Gray as I do with Juwan Johnson, because, like, 2 of the last 3 weeks, he's had 2 touchdowns in 2 games. So 4 touchdowns in the last 3 games. And in both of those games, he had 5 targets and 4 targets. Again, that feels very Tucker Kraft-like for me, where Juwan Johnson, I know, will be the primary target, and he gets the Giants today, whereas Noah Gray gets the Chargers. Johnson makes more sense to me. And then Calvin Austin or Noah Gray, I'd go with Calvin Austin here, because I will say this, like, thinking about this one throughout the live stream today, the way that the Steelers have thrown the ball anyways this year is, like, they're not usually doing a ton of, like, possession receiver throws. Like, a lot of the time, like, it's kind of just come down to, let's throw a Russell Wilson moon ball over the middle of the field or down the sidelines on 3rd down. And, like, that's where Calvin Austin's, like, made a lot of his work. So I think there's still the potential for big play here with Calvin Austin. I think that his ceiling is higher than Noah Gray's, and I think that his floor is probably as safe. So I would go Johnson, and I would go with Calvin Austin. Appreciate the super chat. G Medina, what's going on? Appreciate the super chat. Start 2. Kyron, Bucky, and Cook. Happy NFL Sunday. Right back at you. Kyron, Bucky, and Cook. Great problems to have. You've got good problems here. So again, I will go with James Cook over Bucky, again, because we have to split hairs here with 2 great players, because they both have great opportunities this week. Bucky, to me, feels less of a stable play, because when I watched him leave the stadium last week, the guy was wrapped up like a mummy, and he was basically deemed questionable, like, all week. Like, the guy barely practiced this week. No. So I like him. I like the play, but do I feel confident? Absolutely not. So I play Cook over Bucky, and when I play Kyron over Bucky, that's close, man. That really is close. Kyron's matchup today versus the Bills is actually secretly good, because the Bills have had a weakness with running backs, but Kyron's ceiling is getting cut a little bit, because I pointed this out earlier in the week. Like, what they did with Kyron was that they gave Corum more opportunities than they have all year last week. So it actually worked out well for both guys, because Kyron has been struggling with efficiency this year, especially as the year has gone on. What they did last week was they gave him like 15 carries instead of like 20 or 22, and he ended up being way more efficient. So, like, I could easily see that happening again, and that lowers his upside. Not his floor necessarily, but his upside. With Bucky, he's got tons of upside this week. Like, he's playing the Raiders, and at this point, it's very clear, like, that even the Bucs are acknowledging, like, he's a better running back than Rachaad White is. So for me personally, I think Bucky just feels like a better play overall than Kyron does. I'd go Bucky and Cook. But again, great problems to have. Appreciate the super chat. Oscar Serrano, what's going on? Appreciate the super chat. That is a super sticker. I don't even know if there's a chat with this one. Okay. Arizona or Miami? Yeah, I personally think that with the Dolphins, like, their defense has just not been very good in fantasy. They theoretically have a great matchup, right? Obviously, it's versus the Jets. Like, they could turn the ball over. They may not score many points. But, like, I just want to show people this. Like, their upside this year has been one double-digit performance against New England. Depending on your format, maybe you got another one in Week 10 versus the Rams. But other than that, like, their defense has been pretty disgusting in fantasy. They just don't have pass rushers right now, and they don't have a ton of playmakers on the back end. So I just don't see their ceiling being as high as the Cardinals. The Cardinals, realistically, man, like, look at their past 4 games. 12 points, 12 points, 11 points, 7 points. It's a 7-point floor, and they did that against the Vikings. Depending on your format, that's probably closer to 10. Like, the Cardinals' defense is legit in fantasy. It's legit. So, for me personally, I think that the Cardinals are not only the safer play, but the higher upside play. Like, 100% of the time. Even when they're playing, the freaking Vikings, they did really well. This week they get the Seahawks, who Geno Smith is extremely turnover prone. Appreciate the super chat. Voltic Swift, what's going on? Appreciate the super chat. Westbrook-Akine or Neighbors PPR? Neighbors is limited. Yeah, a lot of people probably won't like this. I'm going to go with Nick Westbrook-Akine. Listen, Malik Neighbors has already been pretty bad in fantasy. And I don't think... Is he even playing today? Is he playing? He is active. Okay, that makes... He will play a limited role. Yeah, I'm out. I'm out on him, dude. It's already been bad. The problem with Malik Neighbors, guys, is it's already been... There's no upside. There's no upside. There's been a safe floor because he's in on 90% of the snaps. Well, this week, if he's got a limited role, if he's in on 60 to 70% of the snaps, I'm out. I'm out. Westbrook-Akine already has higher upside. I'd go Westbrook-Akine. Appreciate the super chat. Ryan, what's going on? Appreciate the super chat. PPR start 2 between Ladd, Trey Tucker, Calvin Austin, Ray Davis, and Kendre. Also, Trey or Austin rest of season. Thanks for fellow Ryan. Right back at you, man. Right back at you. So, Ladd, Trey Tucker, Calvin Austin, Ray Davis, and Kendre. Obviously, like I said, the problem that you're seeing right now is that you've got Ladd, who is clearly the best option out of this group. It's not even close. Ladd is so clearly the best option you've got. If he wasn't questionable tonight, I would say Ladd without question. You throw him right in your lineup. Your problem is obviously you don't have that stability knowing that it's a Sunday night game, and you also don't have another Sunday night / Monday night option. There's problems here for sure. Now, the good thing, I guess, is that, and take this with a grain of salt, Calvin Austin, again, I think Calvin Austin probably sees about 8 targets today. And I would say about 4 of them are probably downfield targets. I would imagine that 4 of those targets are Russell Wilson moonballs. And whether they hit or not on 1 or 2, that would probably, if they could even hit on just 1 or 2, that'd be pretty solid performance. So I think that Calvin Austin has to be one of your plays here. And listen, like I said, I would love nothing more than to play Ladd McConkey. Game time call. You don't have another Sunday or Monday night option. It sucks. So I think I'd end up going with Trey Tucker as my other one. Because the good thing, I did kind of highlight this yesterday on the must start and sit wide receiver video. The good thing with Trey Tucker is the last 2 weeks, he had 8 targets 2 weeks ago and he had 1 target last week. However, he got in the end zone last week and 8 targets. This guy is actually kind of becoming a focal point in this offense. And the running back room is still a mess. Those last 2 games, the running back room has been a mess. I think I actually see pretty decent upside with Trey Tucker. So I'd go with Trey Tucker and I would go with Calvin Austin. And then Trey or Austin rest of season. I'd go with Calvin Austin rest of season because his role feels more definable for me personally than Trey Tucker's does. Calvin Austin, ever since Russ took over, he's basically been getting 4 to 5 targets per game. Like, coming in against the Jets, 4 targets, 6 targets, 2, 3, 2. And the only reason, like, why he had less targets in week 11 and 13, only reason he had 2 is because he left both those games early with an injury. So, the guy has had a pretty consistent, stable role, and it feels more defined to me than Trey Tucker's does. So, I'd go Calvin Austin rest of the season. Appreciate the super chat. Hoy and Vlog, what's going on? Appreciate the super chat. Pick 2, Swift, Debo, Devonta, Braylon, and Chuba. Braylon's going in for sure. I like Braylon above all those guys. Combo of the safest floor and highest ceiling, I would say, out of those guys. Swift is playing at 3 o'clock. I like the matchup if he plays. Devonta and Chuba, aren't they playing at 3 as well? No, they're playing at noon. Yeah. Probably don't want to take the risk. Because if you don't go with Swift, you're going to have to go with Debo, and that sounds disgusting to me right now. So, I think I'll probably end up going with Devonta Smith. Try to hit the upside over Chuba. Yeah, I'll go with Devonta Smith, and I'll go with Braylon Allen. Appreciate the super chat. Invert FNM. What's going on? Appreciate the super chat. Braylon, Garrett Wilson, Jennings, or Chuba flex? Yeah, I think Braylon's probably the best play again. Jennings dropped just because I think the matchup stinks. Like, the matchup is not anything I really want to mess around with. And Chuba, obviously, the matchup is not anything I want to mess with. Garrett Wilson is not a bad play because the Dolphins defense, like I said, they're totally beatable. The question ultimately becomes, like, Garrett Wilson, I just don't see tons of upside with Garrett Wilson. Like, they don't throw him the ball, and they throw him the ball, but like the past several weeks, his floor's been low because he's not connecting. Like, Rodgers is falling apart, guys. He's falling apart at the seams, and he's not like connecting downfield anymore with Garrett Wilson. It's over. Like, I think Braylon has probably got the safest role because, the good thing that Breece has is that Breece all year has been getting targets out of the backfield. And I see that today for Braylon Allen. So I'd go Braylon at the flex. Appreciate the super chat. Jeremy Cody, what's going on? Appreciate the super chat. Shakir versus Neighbors. Yeah, I'd go with Shakir today. Look, like I said, Malik Neighbors, if you have not heard, is limited today. He's active in this game, but he's expected to have a limited role today. Well, even with a fully healthy Malik Neighbors getting 90% of the snaps, his ceiling has been non-existent since September. Since the month of September, this guy's ceiling has been 10 to 11 points in half PPR format. It's been consistent, but that's, again, playing 90% of the snaps. So assuming this guy gets like 60 to 70% of the snaps today, like, he's got very, very little chance of hitting that floor still. Like, his floor this week probably 0 points, honestly. And the ceiling is probably basically what this is. Whereas Shakir, the good thing with Khalil Shakir is that he's consistently getting, anywhere between like 7 to 12 targets. So that can be relied upon because of, again, like with Malik Neighbors, if it was a normal week, I'd probably go with Malik Neighbors because I do think he's more effective at hitting that floor. Because look at Shakir. Like, he can get 8 points, he can get 5 points. Like, Very rarely. He doesn't get in the end zone either. So, like, there's just not much upside there. But Shakir feels ultimately just safer this week to me. So I'd go with Shakir over Neighbors. Appreciate the super chat. Play one wide receiver in a flex. Pacheco, Judy, Jennings, Mooney, and DK. Oh, man. I think Judy cannot go on your bench. I've been saying this for a while. Just the way that Jerry Judy is playing, you can't put him on your you can't put him on your bench. Like, more importantly, the way that Jameis is playing, you want an option that's attached to Jameis. And Judy, without Tillman again, has no legitimate competition. Like, Elijah Moore is a good number 2 right now in Cleveland, but there's Jerry Judy doesn't have real competition for actual target domination. He's going to dominate the targets 100%. So for me personally, I think Judy cannot go on your bench. And I also think that, I said this on the start sit wide receiver video yesterday. DK is as close as it gets to being a must start without being a must start for me this week. DK feels like he should go in most lineups because, again, his floor is really safe right now because he's getting about 9 targets per game since he came back from injury, with the exception of 5 targets versus Arizona. But his floor has been hitting, and his ceiling is obviously really high. Am I having audio issues? Am I having audio issues, guys? I can hear myself fine through the other end. I don't know. Hopefully we all are having audio issues. Let me know, though. So, yeah, I think, Bullwinkle, back to your question. Sorry about that. I'd go with Judy and I'd go with DK personally. Appreciate the super chat. T-Break, what's going on? Appreciate the super chat. I need 2 wide receivers in a flex. Calvin Ridley, Garrett Wilson, Adam Thielen, Isaac Guerendo, and Neighbors. Hurt hip, saying he may be limited. I'm seeing a lot of people saying that I am, but some saying that I'm not struggling with it. Let me see. How about now? Just keep me posted, guys. Keep me posted if my audio is struggling. Because, I've got it playing through a different device, and it's coming through fine over on my end. T-Break. What's going on? Appreciate the super chat. I need 2 wide receivers in a flex. Calvin Ridley, Garrett Wilson, Adam Thielen, Isaac Guerendo, Neighbors. So my 2 wide receivers have got to be Ridley and Garrett Wilson. I can't trust Thielen or Neighbors this week. Those 2 guys, Thielen, his Panthers are going to get crushed. And, yeah, I think that, Neighbors, you can't trust him either. So, the flex is going to be Isaac Guerendo for me. Guerendo has to go in your lineup. He does. Guerendo just straight up has to go in your lineup. He's in my opinion, top 15 back this week. So I'd go Guerendo, I'd go Calvin Ridley, and I'd go with Garrett Wilson. Appreciate the super chat. Jordan Eversole. Appreciate the super chat. All full PPR. Tracy, Najee, or Mooney. Elijah Moore or Tank. Hopkins, DK, or Keenan. And Amir or Sincere. Don't know what I'm going to do more between them. Sorry, guys. I'm like distracted, trying to figure out if this audio is working or not for you guys. Because I'm seeing some people say... Yeah, someone said to restart the stream, to refresh it. If you guys are having audio issues, to refresh your stream. Because I do hear it fine on my end as well. So I'm curious what's going on. Trying to answer fantasy questions here. Okay, so Jordan Eversole. All full PPR. Tracy, Najee, or Mooney. Elijah Moore or Tank. Hopkins, DK, or Keenan. And Amir or Sincere. Don't know what I'm going to do. So Tracy, Najee, or Mooney. I think that, like I said, with Tracy, my problem is the Giants, obviously, are just dysfunctional and I can't trust them. And at the same time, I'm also Najee, like I said, I think Najee actually I think he's got a pretty decent amount of upside this week. I think probably close to Tracy, maybe if anything else, Najee has a little bit more upside than Tracy. And I think probably a relatively safe floor. I think Najee is the better option than Tracy. When I play Mooney, like I said, my problem with Mooney stems from Kirk Cousins. He's falling apart before our eyes. The matchup is fantastic. I just don't trust Kirk Cousins right now. I watched that guy, and I got to tell you, it's one of the saddest things I've seen in a long time. That guy, I thought he was going down. I was ready to grab him just watching him. This guy, he's throwing up ducks. He's throwing up ducks, I'm telling you guys. The more you watch him, this guy looks like the wheels are coming off. Like Aaron Rodgers this year. There's two quarterbacks that I've noticed significant drop-off from. Rodgers, obviously, and Kirk is starting to show it. So, I got to go with Najee out of that group. Elijah Moore or Tank Bigsby, because Tank Dell's on bye this week. So you got to go with Elijah Moore over Tank Bigsby for sure. Hopkins, DK, or Keenan. I'd go DK because, like I said, I don't think you can put DK on your bench. I really don't. DK Metcalf, the floor is safe and the ceiling is higher than Hopkins. Keenan is not a bad play right now. I just think I don't trust Keenan quite as much to sustain this level of production for some reason. Maybe it's an oversight by me, but I'm willing to put my chips in on DK more than I am on Keenan this week. Amir or Sincere? I'd probably stick with Amir Abdullah. Just because, he's kind of led the way for them. What was his opportunity like last week? Let's see. Where is old Amir Abdullah? Where are you, Amir? Can't find him. There he is. Amir Abdullah. Yeah, 10 rushes, 8 rushes, and he's getting a bunch of targets. That's kind of what his game is, too. I'd personally go with... I'd go with Abdullah because they're gonna need to throw against Tampa to keep up. So I'd go with Abdullah over Sincere. Appreciate the super chat. All right, we're coming up on game time, so I'm going to start going through these questions a little faster. Sorry about the audio issues we've been experiencing. I think we've seen to gotten straightened out. Like the video, subscribe to the channel. Let's get back to it. Chris DeLucia, what's going on? Appreciate the super chat. What's up? Back right at you. Lost your question here for a second. Let's go over here. Pollard, Garendo, or Judy? Yeah, for me personally, I've got to go with Garendo over Judy a little bit because the good thing I like about Garendo is the matchup today. The matchup is really solid. The Bears' problem this year on defense has been against running backs. So it just makes more sense for me to play the good matchup. And again, like, you know what you're getting. I know what I'm getting from Shanahan run offense. Like, that guy wants to run the ball. Whereas with Judy, like, Judy's... Last week he had a great opportunity because for some reason they chose not to have Pat Surtain follow around Jerry Judy all game like they should have. They didn't do it until it was too late. But this week, like, I could imagine that Joey Porter Jr. is probably going to be following around Jerry Judy. I would imagine this is probably going to be the case. So I think that Garendo is, again, you're splitting hairs here. I think Judy is a good play. I've told a lot of people to play Judy today. I don't think he's a bad play. I think I prefer Garendo this week. Appreciate the super chat. Jeremy Cody, what's going on? Appreciate the super chat. Bucky versus Aaron Jones. I would personally go with Bucky Irving for sure. Injury concerns me a little bit. Like I said, I do have slight concerns over the injury, but ultimately, Aaron Jones I don't have as much confidence in. With Bucky, I love the matchup, and I also, just the heater that he's on, I can't take my foot off the gas on that one. Appreciate the super chat. Michael Merowitz, what's going on? Appreciate the super chat. 2 wide receivers and flex. CeeDee Lamb, Judy, Evans, and Bucky. Bucky's going in the flex for sure. And I would go with Jerry Judy and Mike Evans in the wide receiver position. It feels weird. I actually kind of really like the CeeDee Lamb play today. The only problem I have with it is that, you know, like I said, the guy's ceiling is no longer 20 points. Like, when I look at Judy and when I look at Evans, yeah, they clearly have a 20-point ceiling. Bucky has a 20-point ceiling. CeeDee, I like him hitting his ceiling this week at probably like 15 points. But anything more than 15 points is a tall task when you have Cooper Rush as your quarterback. So I'll go with Judy, Evans, and Bucky. Appreciate the super chat. Alex Fernandez, what's going on? Appreciate the super chat. D-Hop or Devonta Smith? Or start both and bench Chubb? Cub? I'm going to assume that you're talking about... I'll answer it 2 different ways, actually. Assuming you're talking about Nick Chubb, I would play both D-Hop and Devonta Smith over Nick Chubb. So I would say play both of them. If you're talking about Chuba Hubbard, I'd probably start Chuba over DeAndre Hopkins. Because I think, at least with Chuba, I think I could get maybe like a 15-point game. Like if he gets in the end zone potentially. With Hopkins, I don't think I'm getting 15 tonight versus the Chargers. So if it's Nick Chubb, I'd play D-Hop and Devonta Smith. If it's Chuba Hubbard, I would go with Devonta Smith and Chuba Hubbard. Appreciate the super chat. Axer XIYT. What's going on? Appreciate the super chat. Flex option. Tyrone Tracy, Jordan Addison, and Johnny Smith. You got to play Jonnu. You got to. This guy is, I've been saying it all week. The good thing with Jonnu Smith is that this is not a fluke. Like, it's actually backed up by a stable foundation here through 8 targets, 11 targets, 11 targets the last 3 games. The guy's been in on no less than 70% of the snaps. This guy is really important to this offense right now. It's actually being backed up by legitimate substance that is not fluky. So, I like Jordan Addison. This week I think his upside is really high, but I don't see his floor as safe as Jonnu's. I'll go with Jonnu Smith. Stay in the flames, baby. Appreciate the super chat. MC Studios, what's going on? Appreciate the super chat. Flex Dowdle or Hawkinson? Love the content. Appreciate you. Appreciate you being here very, very much. Dowdle or Hawkinson? Yeah, man. I did point this out also. There is a trend with TJ Hawkinson that you could follow, and whether you believe in it or not, that's up to you. But there is a trend going on right now with TJ Hawkinson. So since he came back from the injury, look at what he's been doing. So he's had one bad game, first game back, where he had 4 targets. Then the next game, he had 9 targets. And he had an 11-point game in half PPR format. So much better in full PPR. Then he went back, and then the following week, he had 3 targets, 2 points in fantasy. Then the next week, 9 targets and 15 points. And then last week, he had 4. So, like, there is a pattern here if you're starting to follow it. Whether you believe in the pattern or not, that's up to you, I guess. But for me personally, like, I do think that there is some weight to that. And the matchup today versus Atlanta is great. Whereas with Rico, I have expressed my concerns with Rico this week. I have concerns with the Cowboys sticking with the run. I don't count on them and rely on them to do that. I think they very easily can stray away from the run. Because I don't think if the Bengals are playing at the effort level they have been, which maybe they will or maybe they won't since they're basically out of playoff contention, but if they play at the level that they can, I don't know how Dallas is going to keep up. I just don't think they'll be able to. So I think Dowdle, there's very, very high potential that they stray away from the run. I'll play Dowdle just because I think I trust his opportunity share more. Appreciate the super chat. Like I said, guys, we're coming up on game time here, so I'm going to speed race through the remaining super chats and questions we have. Azer, what's going on? Appreciate the super chat. Addison or Nick Westbrook PPR? I'm going to personally go with Addison. I think that the matchup is great for both of them. I just think that with Addison, I trust the targets more. And I do think he's in line for a good day. Appreciate the super chat. Malibu 860, what's going on? Appreciate the super chat. Garrett Wilson to start or Nick Westbrook Akide? 2 ways to look at it. I think Garrett Wilson, honestly, not even really a safe floor. Now, actually, there's not really 2 ways to look at it. Garrett Wilson, the other way you could look at it is that Garrett Wilson is getting more targets per game, but they're not really amounting to anything in the past 3 games. Honestly, like it feels weird to bench a guy with 6, 8, 10 targets the last 3 weeks. I think I'm going to do it, though. Just the run that Nick Westbrook-Akine is on, like, stay in the flames. Garrett Wilson has no flames right now. His upside is invisible at this moment in time. I'll personally go with Nick Westbrook-Akine. Feels weird, but I'd personally do it. Appreciate the super chat. Rachel Cruz, what's going on? Appreciate the super chat. Flex Bucky or James Conner? Bucky, for sure. Bucky's upside is higher. I don't like the matchup this week for James Conner, and I don't particularly love how he looks efficiency-wise right now. Appreciate the super chat. Bassa B, what's going on? Appreciate the super chat. Standard, Njoku, Thielen, or Bigsby for my flex. Standard league. So you need to maximize touchdown upside. Bigsby has 0. I will not play Tank Bigsby. Thielen has potential because they're going to be in garbage time, and he is their best possession receiver. But PPR, I think Thielen is a good play. I don't particularly like him in a standard league because like I said, I think they're going to get choked out this week. I do. I think they're going to get choked out. I'd go with Njoku. The potential that he gets in the end zone every week is always there. Like, they target him at the red zone. They just do. So I'd go with Njoku. Appreciate the super chat. MC Studios, what's going on? Appreciate the super chat. Do I flex Garrett, Dowdle, or Hawkinson? I think I would go with Garrett Wilson. I'd go Dowdle over Hawkinson. I just talked about that one. And I think I'd go with Garrett Wilson just because, again, I trust the workload more with him. I don't trust Rico's workload. In this type of matchup, they could easily get blown out. Not because the Bengals defense is good, but because the Bengals offense, if they play to their ability, they could put tons of points on them, and I don't see the Cowboys being able to match them in a shootout. And if that's the case, they will stray away from Rico Dowdle. So I'm going to go with Garrett Wilson here. Appreciate the super chat. Riaz, what's going on? Appreciate the super chat. Charbonnet or Pollard non-PPR? Thanks, bud. I'd go with Charbonnet. Yeah, like I said, there's a real problem when you look at Tony Pollard's game splits between when Tajay plays and when Tajay does not play. When Tajay plays, he's averaging like 8 fantasy points per game. When Tajay doesn't play, he's averaging like closer to 14. Like it's a pretty big difference there. Tajay's playing today, so I don't like that. And Charbonnet's all alone. I'd go with Charbonnet. Appreciate the super chat. Jeremy Cody, appreciate the super chat. Murray or Tua? I'm going Tua this week, actually. I actually made that decision in one of my leagues. I've got both guys as options. I'd personally go with Tua. I think, listen, Tua's got a good matchup this week versus the Jets. It's at home in Miami. They're fighting for playoff spot. He's at home. He's at home. He's at home. He's at home. That's the important part. He's in the weather and the climate that he likes. Now, actually, I will give him credit. He actually did pretty well in the cold last week in fantasy. But back at home, I love the matchup. I'm going with Tua. Appreciate the super chat. Jordan Eversole, appreciate the super chat. We're speeding through these last couple. Wilson or Addison? I would go with Addison over Wilson because I think his upside is just much higher, and I don't think his floor is any less safe. Apocalypse Cloud. Appreciate the super chat. Half PPR. Pick one. JSN, Ladd, BTJ, MVS. Going with JSN either way. That's the good thing about Ladd is you do, like, I would play Ladd, obviously, if you pick 2 options and if Ladd was healthy. But, like, the good thing is that with Ladd being injured, I already prefer Jackson Smith-Njigba even if Ladd was healthy. I'm going with Jackson Smith-Njigba here. Appreciate the super chat. Raven Seju, what's going on? Appreciate the super chat. Sart 3, Sharp, Braylon, Sincere, NWI, Wilson, D-Hop, Hawkinson. Charbonnet, Braylon Allen, and for me, I'm going with Nick Westbrook-Ikine over Wilson, D-Hop, and Hawk. Stay in the Flames, and I think you've got 2 relatively stable. Sharp is a stable floor play. I think Braylon is a little bit more unstable, but I'm still picking him over all those other options. So Charbonnet, Braylon, and Nick Westbrook-Ikine for me. Appreciate the super chat. Brennan Costa, what's going on? Appreciate the super chat. Trey Tucker or Quentin Johnston for wide receiver 2, full PPR. It sucks, but I'm going to go with Quentin Johnston personally. Especially if Ladd doesn't play tonight, like they're going to have no choice but to try to get him involved. Sucks. I get it. His past 2 games have been what we're used to, but I kind of like this opportunity tonight for Quentin Johnston. I'll go QJ. Appreciate the super chat. All right, we're gonna speed just couple random questions these last couple minutes. Jonnu Smith or Drake London at the flex? Very close. I will go with Drake London. Need 2 wide receiver, 2 running back, and a flex. CD, London, Evans, Tyreek, Aaron Jones, Swift, Charbonnet. Wayne asks, I'll go with Evans and London as my wide receivers. My 2 running backs will be Charbonnet and Aaron Jones. And my flex will be Tyreek Hill. Christian Miller, appreciate the super chat. We'll end on Christian Miller's question. Just so people know, I do have a lag. So if I log off and you've already put in a super chat, it's only because I didn't see it if I didn't answer it. So I apologize for the lag in advance if anybody does that. Harrison Jr. or Mooney? I would go with... They're both unstable. I'll go with Mooney because I like the matchup better than I like it with Marvin Harrison Jr. Yeah. I don't trust Mooney. Or I'm sorry, I don't trust either, really, but I don't trust Harrison Jr. Appreciate the super chat. All right, it's noon. We made it. It's a big day. Final battle begins now. Let's win today. Like the video, subscribe to the channel. Enjoy football on Sunday. Love you guys. I'll see y'all on tomorrow's videos. Peace.